soon as we can justify a $2 million sales price, we're going to sell it, because that'll be an incredible return for the investors. It'll be, a great return for us as the GP, and we can move on and go to another one.
Welcome to the Fully Funded Show. Whether you're a capital raiser, deal sponsor, fund manager, or LP investor, we've got the insights you need for investing success. Join Sam Silverman each week for expert interviews, insider tips, and strategies to fully fund your ventures. Let's go!
We are back with the Fully Funded Show, this time with Tory Sheffer, who I've known for a handful of years now, done some deals together. Tory's also a coach in our Fully Funded community. So Tory, want to give the listeners some info on your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam. I guess my background in short terms is I'm based in Michigan. I buy sub-institutional multifamily in the suburbs of Michigan, primarily Detroit, Grand Rapids area. And I say suburbs because I'm very strictly suburbs. I avoid Detroit. I avoid like urban Ann Arbor. I avoid Pontiac. I avoid Lansing, just because those are urban cores. We can get into it a little bit more later, but I like the suburbs. So a typical deal for us is going to be 8 to 80 units, anywhere from $1 to $15 million purchase price. Is kind of like what I would call our bread and butter deal. And yeah, I guess as getting back to the background, I used to be a real estate agent. So I was just selling houses locally and was doing really well with that. And I found I wanted to have some equity and be able to actually build equity value in something, versus as an agent, you're just chasing the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. You're paycheck to paycheck, sort of in actual terms of lifestyle anyway. So, I was making okay money to, I could have made a living. I think I was making around 200 grand a year when I got out of that, but there was never a spot where it's like, okay, I could retire from this. So that's why you see the typical realtor is like a 57-year-old lady or something, because, there's a lot that work into their 70s because there's nothing to ever retire from. So anyway, I did that from 2015 until 2020, I would say, is like the transition year. 2019, I really started to go heavy into multifamily. And in 2017, I discovered multifamily and started just learning everything I could about it. So basically took those 2 years to learn, did some networking, looked for deals. And then 2019, finally found my first deal. And that deal closed in 2020 and just basically, shot out of a cannon from there and let the snowball grow.
Yeah, I think you make a few really good points. One, when you look at a role like a real estate agent, or if you're a seller, I know a lot of our listeners likely fall into the tech sales world. So myself, my background, you can make a really good living, right? You can make yourself pretty quickly multiple six figures, mid six figures if you perform well. But there's a few issues that come with that, right? One being the tax rate. Two being it's purely a cash play, right? There isn't any equity that you're really tied to in the future. So you have to keep earning and earning and earning to go build something for yourself. I think second, you really dug into the smaller units that you're targeting. So let's kind of look first to the career piece, and then kind of the unit count of the deals you target. Kind of walk us through your take on, why most people enter these fields and also kind of get stuck in these fields as well from a earning perspective.
Yeah, from an earnings perspective, you can 100% see it. I mean, being in any sales role, it's like you can go from 0 to 200,000 in a year or 2 years. Like, what other career can you truly do that quickly, unless you're like, tech engineer or whatever. But let's just say like, basically nothing, and you want to make 200 grand in your second year. What are you going to do? In my case, probably sales. Like I'm a sales guy. I'm not a tech guy. So, that's just your earning is tied to your output, and I'm willing to, work 80 hours a week and get that outcome from that income perspective that I wanted. And I would say that's the biggest thing. Like when as 2015, I was 21 years old when I got my license. So then like 22, 23 years old, making, well over 100 grand, that's a lot of money at that age. And so that's I think why people get trapped in it, because then your lifestyle creep starts to happen. You just start to spend more. You might get married and have kids or buy cars or a house, and now you got to keep earning to be able to maintain that lifestyle that you created. And so it's like there's never that cutoff point where it's like, okay, I'm going to go start and do something else and make zero again for a year or for 2 years or whatever. It's really hard to do. So I think that's why people get stuck in those type of roles, because on the surface level, it's like, yeah, you're making, even if you're making 300 grand, it's like, great, but can you stop? Like, if you're making 300 grand and you're spending 150 a year, how long do you have to actual like true runway? A year, right? Every year is okay. Simple math, spend 150, make 300. Then you have next year, you could take off and make zero, but that, the year after you got to be making money. So I think that's the biggest thing why people get trapped into it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it a ton. So actually, a really good buddy of mine worked for a big name tech company, and he was a controller, right? Helped in a lot of the finances side of it. And he'd have these conversations with sellers, where their average sellers probably making $300,000-$400,000 a year. And he's like, almost every one of these people living paycheck to paycheck, right? Because like you're saying, if like let's play the numbers out. You make $300,000 a year. Say you're in a decent sized city. You're by taking home, probably shave the first $20,000 off for your 401k that they push you to go do, which you can't use until you're 62, 65 years old. You then have the tax piece of it. So you're probably only taking home 180, 190, 200 maybe, right? In terms of your net. So if you're spending 150, you're really only netting yourself about 50 grand to go allocate to investments or to go have as a savings for future use. So that runway is really short unless you're building a level of equity and kind of doing what you're doing. So completely agree. Like awesome field to go break into with a low barrier of education and qualification, but something that you have to go stash capital away and kind of build your way out there too.
Yeah. So that was the thing for me is once I learned about multifamily, I was like, okay, this is obviously a field that I want to be in. I think it makes sense. I understood it from a fundamental perspective. I had the real estate background of selling houses, granted from the investment side and agent side, it's night and day, but, I still knew the process. I knew a lot of the same people. But the biggest thing for me was my first deal happened to just be an absolute home run. So I made like a little over 200 grand, day one on the first deal. And that was where it's like, okay, I can, fully cut ties with selling houses and do this full time. And then, I had bought a couple of the deals at that point, or I was under contract on a few deals at that point. So, I kind of had the wheels moving at that point. So it was a simpler, I would say, set off point for me, but it was still like a full year of, I didn't know if I was going to go full time in multifamily versus continue to sell houses.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, that, I think for you, making that kind of quick pop on your first deal is huge. Most people don't. And I think that's something that's a huge shift, right? Like you look at the sales world, you make your money, pretty close to immediately, right? You may have some net 30, net 60 terms, but you make your money pretty quick. Help us understand, I think it's a common misconception too in the real estate space. People look at, hey, they're syndicating deals, they're loaded, right? They are really liquid, they're cash heavy, they're doing all these deals, they're in a great spot personally, financially. Like let's kind of dive deep in what that looks like for someone who's actually doing deals themselves, as I think there's a misconception in a big way as to how you're compensated from the outside looking in as a syndicator operator of doing deals yourself.
Yeah, so I saw a great tweet this morning, and it said, "What do syndicators and wholesalers have in common? Neither of them have the money to close." it's in simplest terms, it's true, right? A syndicator is going to go out and raise the capital to buy the deal, and a wholesaler doesn't have the money to buy the deal, so they're going to sell it to sell the contract. So, from an actual, like, let's say we go buy a deal, like a typical deal for us. Let's just say it's $5 million for simple numbers. So if we go buy a deal for $5 million, that's typically going to be a 2 to 3% acquisition fee. So, and I'm doing math here while we're doing this. So let's just say it's 3%. Yeah, at 2%, it's 100K. So let's just say 2%. So at 2%, it's 100 grand. So that's what we would make up front. Um, and then that's going to be net of everything, right? So co-investment, ignore all the other stuff. Because once you start to co-invest, also, you make 100K on the acquisition fee, but then now you're personally investing 50 grand, 100 grand into the deal. So you're making zero day one in a lot of cases. A lot of cases you can get away with less co-invest depending on your LP base and how that's structured. Let's just pretend for simple numbers, you're not going to co-invest anything. So $5 million deal, 2% acquisition fee, make 100 grand. Now, ongoing fees you'll probably charge an asset management fee. It's going to be either based off gross income or off the equity invested. So we charge a 1% asset management fee off the equity invested. So let's say on a $5 million deal, we probably raised $1.5 million for that. So that's going to be $15,000 a year. So we're going to make 100 up front and 15 a year. And then on that deal, a typical value add deal is not going to exceed the pref from a cash flow standpoint. So we structure deals with an 8% preferred return and 70-30 after that goes to the LP. So in order for us to make $1 from cash flow, the deal has to exceed 8% cash on cash return to the LPs. So, in the first 2 years of a typical value add deal, that's rare. I've had a few that have done it, but it's pretty rare. Typically, you're going to look at, anywhere from probably 3 to 6% in the first 2 years. And really where the liquidity happens for a syndicator is when you sell. So I like to sell. A lot of people, kind of come with this idea of, and I did originally as well, of, hey, I'm going to buy these deals and we're going to refinance and we're going to hold them for 10 years and, whatever, we're going to hold them forever because never sell your real estate. But when you look at it in actual dollars and actual return on equity, it makes a ton of sense to sell. And then for the syndicator, the GP, that's where all of your liquidity comes from. If you don't sell, you don't really have a true liquidity event, I would say, because when we go to sell, let's say we took a $5 million deal, now it's worth 10 million. So we're gonna pay back our loan of 3.5, and then we're gonna pay back our investors of their 1.5, and then everything after that is split 70-30. So that would be like what, I don't know, ballpark number, $3 million, call it, to the LPs.
Yeah.
So it's going to be
about
like
that. Yeah, you've got
3.5.
some closing costs, you've got some pref accrued, you've got some construction costs, right?
Yeah. So it's all going to, I guess, 5, we're going to probably be all into it for, call it 6. You sell it for 10. There's a net, maybe $1 million at the end of the day. And 5 to 10 million, it's not, that's not super common, obviously, but just using round numbers. So, that $1 million is to the GP after when you sell is huge versus, you made 100 grand up front. Now you're going to make $1 million. So it's really heavily back weighted. So you need to have the income to be able to earn and live and find more deals and put up more pursuit costs during that timeline. That timeline could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 2 years in some cases, but typically we're looking at a 2 to 5 year sales timeline. And we're not looking 5 to 10 is unrealistic. 5 to 7.5 or 5 to 8 would probably be more realistic. So, maybe we're going to make 600 grand on the back end, but that's going to be over that 5 year period. So, as you have to, unless you're constantly buying deals and just forcing every deal through, you need to, I think, sell to actually have any true liquidity. And I went off on a tangent there. I lost track of the original question, but I think it sort of makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah, no, I think that's super helpful for people to really get a deep dive into how syndicators are compensated, how aligned incentives typically are, right? In that structure, the reason the syndicator wouldn't make, a meaningful amount of money until the exit is that they don't really get paid much, right? There are typically level fees that are compensation for the level of work they're putting into it, but the bulk of the compensation is tied to performance, right? Performing above that hurdle in which investors get paid. So I think it helps in terms of investor alignment, but it also, I think, something that the industry has to solve for eventually too, for syndicators, as it's tough for people to go all in at times if they don't have that level of recurring income for themselves too, right? So just like things to go think about as an investor is making sure that person you're investing with is very financially stable, right? They can go
Yeah.
ride out a period of time, and they're not using the deal as a piggy bank is a super important type thing to go dig into as to who you invest with and why, and making sure those incentives are aligned in a way that is, fair, right? Where the better they perform for you, the better they perform for themselves as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're seeing right now. Like in the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, there's so many syndicators that have gotten out of the business or they've transitioned for a short time into something else. A lot have become, maybe they're debt brokers or maybe they've fallen back to their other careers, right? If I had, done terribly at this, I would probably go back to selling houses. It's a super easy thing to fall back to. I still have my license. Like realistically, I could. Do I want to? Absolutely not. But, we've sold several deals now and gone full cycle. So, I don't really need to. I'd be fine. But in the case of a syndicator not, you know, being successful on an actual deal and getting to that liquidity event, it would be super hard if you're not consistently buying deals. So that's, a lot of it is kind of put out there as like, oh, go earn passive income and be a GP. Like it's the opposite of passive income. I mean, we're an operator. I guess, from a fund manager side, it's certainly more passive, but you're still actively pursuing investors. You're still actively pursuing new sponsors to work with. For me, because we're operators, like we're very much in the weeds. Like we micromanage our property managers. We do all of our, we do most of our GC work in-house to control costs, control timing, and things like that. So there's really no passive aspect to it, unless the market, if rates drop to 4% and the market rips again like it did back in 21, then that would be passive. But other than that, it's not passive.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And let's kind of shift gears a bit as well as, most indicators you see are targeting the institutional type deals, right? $20 million and up, deals that are 100, 150 units or more in kind of more major or kind of tier two cities. On your end, why have you chosen to go the route of doing smaller deals?
So the biggest thing for me is that there's the kind of the inefficient market concept is what I chase. You look at from an efficient market standpoint, like the stock market is going to be the most efficient, right? You can get a bid and an ask every second, right? So actively what that stock is worth. Whereas in real estate, there's no active price metric. There's it's purely timing and relationship, and there's so much that goes into it. Price per unit, price per foot, how much is the rent, what's the cap rate, like all of that stuff. It's so far out there to actually come up with a true value. So what we look for is finding those spreads on deals at the institutional level. Those sellers generally are going to be institutional level sellers, right? They're active in the market, they know what they own, and they're likely going to go list it with a broker that knows what they're doing, is going to sell it at the market rate. All the same people are going to see it. All the same people are going to bid on it. And one of them is going to buy it. Whereas my deals, like one we're buying now, I don't know when this comes out. I don't like to talk about live deals, but one we're buying now is the seller is out of state. He's owned this property for several years. He just has a manager that lives on site that manages it. And actually that manager on site tells him how much to charge for rent. They're under rented by like $300 a month. And that's, holding the value of the property down. But then also he wants to sell and get out of it, but he doesn't want to list it on the market. And on the surface, it's like, if you want to sell for the most money, why would you not list it on the market? That makes no logical sense. But there's so many different things that will motivate someone to sell. And the idea of just being able to get rid of it is super valuable to a lot of people, depending on their personal situation. And those are typically the sellers that we deal with. Whether they want to retire, they self-manage, they're tired of self-managing it, they don't want to get another tenant call, and they want to just retire and be done and sell it to someone that they know will buy it. They'll close, they'll get the money, they don't have to think about it ever again. Whereas on the institutional side, it's all about maximizing that last dollar. of sales value through brokers and through all the efficient channels.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think that's one of the unique advantages right now is that you can actually go, you're more likely, right, if things are done well, if you're buying a property that is, from an inefficient seller, right, and
Yep.
they don't really know the value of what they have, there's a lot of opportunity to complete your business plan far more quickly. And if you're looking at doing deals from a perspective of velocity of money, right, of how quickly can you go cycle capital for yourself and as an investor, as we discussed before, the GPs really don't get paid in a meaningful way until the exit happens. So I think targeting deals that you have a higher likelihood of having a good enough basis to go cycle them quickly and complete your business plan, not relying on market factors such as organic rent growth, you get a lot more opportunity to go, move more efficiently and also have less competition on deals from who you're competing with and who they're selling to.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like we bought a deal in February where the seller was doing a 1031 into a not into a REIT, but into a DST, Delaware Statutory Trust. It's like basically a REIT, a non-traded REIT. And he was going to go and make 5 or 6%, and he was happy. That's what he was pitched anyway, and that's what so he's selling his property. We paid $1.2 million, which shakes out to around 57 a door. That deal, his rents in place were like average low 700. He had not raised the rent because he didn't want any vacancy. He just wanted it full all the time. And vacancy meant that he had to spend money to paint, spend money on fixing things, and spend time to find a new tenant. Whereas we came in and we bought it, and market rent for these properties, these units, even without renovations, is $800 or $850. So as these leases expire and we sign new leases, the new leases are at $800. I think we've had maybe 7 or 8 new leases signed in 2 months at $150 increase. And most of these units have had no changes. Whereas one unit, was vacant when we closed and we renovated it. We probably spent, well, not probably, we for sure, I think we spent around $12,000, $12,000 to $15,000 renovating that unit. And that unit's going to rent for $950, where previously it was rented for $700. So, it's just going through the process of these properties at smaller numbers, but we can turn around 20 units or 30 units in a year and a half, like pretty comfortably, probably 2 years. So for that one, like we paid 1.2, and from my point of view, as soon as we can justify $2 million sale price, we're going to sell it, because that'll be an incredible return for the investors. It'll be, a great return for us as the GP, and we can move on and go do another one. So like we raised 650 grand of LP capital for that deal. And that would basically turn the 650 into, I think it's like a 60% net return. If we were to, turn it that quickly in like a year. If we turn it in 2 years, it'll be less, but I guess same dollar amount, but less percentage wise annually. And we'll be able to go, take that 650, turn it into 900, go do another one, and just kind of, rinse and repeat, copy and paste the same model. Yeah. On the institutional side, like to buy a $20 million deal where you have that like simple of tweaks to make to improve the value, it's just harder to find. Like, does it exist? For sure, but it's harder to find. It takes longer to find. There's going to be more buyers. Especially in my position, right? There's going to be buyers that are more well capitalized, that have 5,000 units or 10,000 units. They're going to be able to get better debt with Fannie and Freddie. So the economics of the deal for everyone are going to be different.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a lot of sense too. Like the cycling of capital there is much more efficiently done. And I think you're having a lot of these people who are eggs in their portfolios, eggs in their properties as their retirement plan.
Yeah,
I do want to shift gears too a bit in terms of how you actually go about raising capital. Because I know for you, you've done a lot on places like LinkedIn, on places like Twitter, and leveraging the newsletter that you and Emmy built. So kind of want to walk us through, how you go about building your LP base. I think it's things that people aren't doing today that they probably should.
Yeah, so kind of the initially was just friends and family, and then I've always kept a master contacts list. So like I was a real estate agent before, so I've just saved all my contacts over the years. I thought it would be something that was beneficial, and it turns out it was. So initially, my investors were friends and family and people that I had known from selling houses or title reps or whatever the case may be. Now I've kind of leaned into Twitter and LinkedIn. to just meet more people, right? Cast a wider net. I think on LinkedIn or on Twitter, I had like 9 million impressions in the last year. I don't have any other platform that I can go reach 9 million people in a year. That's remarkable. So when I'm active there, I'll, pretty easily get 1 million people a month. And I just started talking about what we do. So I would talk about a deal that we did, right? We bought it for X, sold it for Y. We had spent this much on renovations. Here's the timeline. Here's the net returns to the LPs. And I posted about that a few times and I guess several times. Obviously, it's been a little while, but I got active originally in May of 21 on Twitter. So it's snowballed now to the point I have somewhere around 18,000 followers, but it's really just talking about what we're doing into the audience, and then the people that are interested in that will follow you or DM you or whatever the case might be there. And from those relationships, it's really built up our LP base. So I use Twitter and LinkedIn kind of as like my cast a wide net. If anyone's interested, come look, here's what I'm doing. And then in my bio, I have a link to our newsletter where in our newsletter, we talk about actively like what deals we're doing. So, how we like to deal or how we found it, what we liked about it, what the business plan was, how it's going today, or if we sold it, right? What did we sell it for? What was the net returns to LPs? Where did we pivot during the business plan? Things don't ever go exactly as you planned. So there's always going to be something in there, but kind of the newsletter is really showing the behind the scenes of every deal that we do, I guess, in simplest terms. And then LPs are able to see that. They're able to hear kind of from my voice and start to understand what our business model is. So that way, when a new deal comes up, they already know what we're going to do, because every deal is basically identical. And they have a feel for what we've done in the past. They've got a feel for our track record, and that kind of the biggest question if someone wants to invest is, do they trust you? And that question of trust, I think, is answered over a series of, call it 6 months or a year, of them getting an email from us every week of talking about deals that we've done and deals that we haven't done. I'll write about deals like 21 units, no deal. Why didn't we not buy it? It was across the street from another deal. We know it was for sale. It sold off market. We know who bought it. One deal, it was 20 units. We owned 60 units right across the street. I think it was 60 units, something like that. And this deal sold for 2.2 million. On the surface, it was great, like 105 a door, where we paid 103 a door. But their units were 450 square feet. Ours were 600. And our offer price for that deal was $1.5 million, whereas it sold for 2.2. So I'm able to go into detail to show that, hey, we're not just buying every deal that exists. And I think that builds a lot of trust over time.
It does, yeah. I think part of what you're solving for too is that the more you can go share about how you think, how you operate, how you do business, the easier it becomes for someone to make a decision as to, do they like you? Do they trust you? Right? The first place is, do they know you? Right? Getting in front of them, whether it be from a newsletter, from people sharing it, from the content you're sharing, from Twitter, getting extra exposure. And then it allows people to kind of opt in and opt out as to who you are as a person. But I'm sure a lot of these conversations you may have now, they probably feel a lot warmer if someone's seen 30 weekly emails go out from you and 100 tweets as to who are you, how do you think, how do you operate, right? Ethics, responsibilities, right? How you think, I think matters a ton too. And it gives people an opportunity to say, is this someone I want to work with or not? The more someone gets to know you, the quicker they can go make that decision when you talk to them.
For sure. Yeah. And that's, I've had people tell me that actually. I had a call with a potential LP this morning, and he's like a high Fortune 500 exec. If I told you his company, you would know exactly who it is. You would know the guy. So you might not know him, but you'd be able to find a ton of information about him. He's been following me on Twitter for I don't know how long, but he just said he enjoys following me on Twitter, and he likes the way that I phrase things and put things into context of how we do deals. I'm able to explain it in a very black and white perspective. What we're doing is not rocket science, right? We're buying 8, 12, 50 unit apartment buildings that the rent is $200-$300 under market, and we're going to bring the rent to market and we're going to sell it at market value. that's not rocket science. It's a very simple but not easy business. And I think being able to portray it in a way that's understandable to everyone and people that don't look at this stuff all day long is super beneficial. And then also just to be a trustworthy person, and be likable, right? At the end of the day, people are going to work with or invest with people that they like and they get along with and feel like they could, go play around a golf or whatever with. I think that's super important. So, as you get out there, you're just going to attract people that are into the things that you do or into your business or whatever the case may be. And that's been super beneficial.
Honestly, it's kind of bad people even have to think about this, but part of it I feel like is that people are, the more they're seeing someone, they're thinking is this person going to steal my money? Or like, is this person trustworthy? Is this person going to go run off and do something crazy? So I feel like you do a really good job of kind of just showing who you are, which in my opinion, and people I know who mutually know us as well, feel are those, very trustworthy and genuine too, which I think definitely portrays in the content that you're sharing. So part of it too is just helping people understand who you are and how you think and operate. So before we hop off here, how and why should the listeners reach out to you here?
Yeah, Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is probably going to be the best spot. If you want to go check out what we're doing with the newsletter, I guess on Twitter, my username is @Tory J Sheffer. I have an orange hat in my profile picture. And then LinkedIn is @Tory Sheffer. But if you want to go check out the newsletter, our newsletter is thecapitalstacknewsletter.com. And you can take a look and read all of the past editions of newsletter. So whether you're interested in our business and what we're doing, or you're just interested in learning how we've done things and what we talk about, I tell people all the time, if it seems like it's interesting to you and you want to use a title or a topic or an idea for your business, I don't care. Go steal every bit of it. I won't be offended. I think, what do they say? Emulation is the greatest form of flattery. But at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. I'm not reinventing the wheel. We're buying, plain vanilla suburban apartments, and we're trying to tell more people that here's what we're doing and here's how you can be involved. So, I try to keep it very, very simple, very to the point. I share a ton of numbers, which might be good, might be bad, but I feel like it's a net positive for people to kind of understand it from a numbers perspective. And I've always been interested in that side of it myself. So, I get entertainment from reading about other people's deals and the actual financials behind it. And so I share those details about ours as well.
Cool. And we'll make sure to link all those social handles in the write up here as well. But yeah, Tory, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you for tuning into the Fully Funded Show hosted by Sam Silverman. If you are enjoying the content, let's take your journey further in the Fully Funded Mastermind. The Fully Funded Mastermind offers more than just insights. It's a mastermind community designed to solve the real challenge of raising capital. By joining, you gain direct access to strategies, coaching, and a network dedicated to turning your financial goals into achievements. Don't let capital raising be a barrier to your success. Visit fullyfunded.capital to explore how our mastermind community can pave your way to financial growth.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fully Funded Show. If you enjoyed today's insights, hit follow, share with your investing pals, and drop us a review. Connect with us on social media for bonus content. Your success is our mission. Keep those funds flowing. See you next time.